Considering home security? Consider this. For 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. The yard sign isn't just a sign, it's a line in the sand. It's no wonder 5 times more people choose ADT to protect their homes. Visit ADT.com to learn more. For license information and terms and conditions, visit ADT.com.
Good Thursday morning, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Glad you were here with us. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. As always, we are presented by Progressive Insurance, and all phone guests will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Guys, we got a lot to get into today.
Yes, we do.
We have a potential elimination game tonight in the NFC South. Falcons really need to find a way to win at home against the Saints to stay in that division with what the Panthers and the Saints have done. And they're playing, twice in 3 weeks?
Twice in 3 weeks.
Yeah, so we'll find out a lot about Atlanta, especially coming off that game.
This is their chance. They have 2 games behind New Orleans, and they play them twice in the next. My math says that could do some good for them.
You know what? Your math is
good.
That's
your playoff.
Good.
The official Mike Golic Sr. playoff odds down the stretch.
It's up online. Golic's playoff predictor. Yeah,
gotcha.
That's how I roll.
Yeah, this weekend it starts with the math.
Yeah, that's exactly
and
right.
Next week we'll get into science.
Well,
no, we will not do that.
But we will never be in a position where I have to show my work.
That is correct. Can I see your notes? No,
you cannot.
There are none. Did it in my head.
There's the answer right there.
Right. Calculators are for. Come on.
Why do I need to tell you how I arrived at that conclusion?
There you
Just
go.
know that I arrived safely
Yes,
at that conclusion.
I know my neighbor had the same answer, but I did not look at that.
No. I don't know what you're talking
Purely
about.
coincidental, guys. I mean, that guy.
These things happen all the time.
Studied together.
They happen all
put
the
in the
time.
man hours.
Osmosis, we were there at the same
go.
time. All right, the guest coming up today, we got Steven Jackson, ESPN NBA analyst. He's going to join us in studio as the Cavs continue to roll and what we've got with Golden State now that they'll be out without Steph Curry for a while. Stu Gatz will join us from the Dan Le Batard Show at the 8:05 time slot. Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL Insider, will be here. Jared Goff, we spoke to him and excited to see what's going to happen this week in a huge game between them and Carson Wentz and the Eagles. And Teddy Atlas will join us at 9:30 Eastern, talk about a big night of boxing coming up this weekend here on ESPN. But we have a ton to deal with, including potential rule changes that Troy Vincent, the executive vice president of football operations, is talking about in the NFL, adopting – I know a rule, Mike Sr., that you don't like at all, potentially the targeting rule in college football into the NFL.
Going to come right out of the gate and get me aggravated, huh?
Good morning.
Yeah, I was. When I saw that, again, for those that may not know, in college there is a targeting rule where if the officials think that a defensive player, hits somebody, a defenseless person in the head, sometimes it doesn't have to be defenseless. If it's your helmet to helmet or get hit in the head, it can be called targeting. They review it. They do go to a review, look at it on video, and if they confirm that, then that player is thrown out of the game. If it's the first half, they're thrown off for the rest of the game. If it's in the second half, they're thrown off for the rest of that game in the first half of the next game. So I don't know what iteration of that the NFL wants to try and emulate, but also if they do it, that means they would have to bring in replay, because there's no way on a bang-bang play you are going to call and throw somebody out of a game, which would be ridiculous. I hate this rule. Hate the rule. Can't stand it because I don't like the fact that so much is put on the defensive player, Mike, that I do think safety has worked to a point where, because guys missiling, just launching and taking somebody out, even head-to-head at times, I think has gone down, that part of it. Guys are using their shoulder more. It's going to be a process because guys have been used to a certain way. So I do think some of that has gone out. But the thing that irks me the most is it's the defensive player's responsibility when an offensive player catches a ball and then the defensive player goes to hit their area and that offensive player kind of folds in or changes levels and the head gets hit, and that's on the defensive player. I can't stand that. And basically what football is saying is, sorry, defensive player, that's on you. You're going to have to deal with the consequences of it, and the consequences are pretty strong, from flags to fines, college being thrown out. Now you're talking about the pros being thrown out and taking more money away. I am completely against it.
I think this is less about what the decision actually entails, because we just handed out suspensions for stuff yesterday that we all agreed were offenses that deserve these because of what you're trying to curtail with the league. I think it's about who's making the decision, and that's going to come up in multiple facets. Mike Mitchell brought up someone who he believes isn't making decisions well on behalf of the league, and I think that's at the crux of this for most guys.
Yeah, and we'll hear from Mike Mitchell, and if you didn't hear it, it was an epic rant on a lot lot of levels. Some of the stuff we agree with. Some of the stuff, well, we may question, but you can't question his passion on that. So we'll get into that a little later too.
The one thing I'll quickly say, Mike, about that is the only problem is when you're talking about suspensions or fines, you can do that after the fact. Then I agree. Then it's about who's making the decision. When you're talking about the targeting rule and throwing somebody out, that's an immediate decision. That's a decision that's going to happen on the field. So whatever happens after that, and you determine maybe that was wrong by the official, damage done. That guy's already been tossed out of the game.
Right, and again, that's one of the rules they're looking at. They're also talking about something specifically that they might be calling the Gronkowski rule with the hit he had over this weekend. We'll get into that later, but first, let's get you going because Mike's already going with...
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not,
it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, and we start off the top with the Cleveland Cavaliers doing it again. They were down 14 at one point to the Kings, but doesn't matter. They came back to beat them 101-95, extending their winning streak to a franchise record-tying 13 games. LeBron finished an assist shy of a triple-double.
By the way, that's the 37th time he's fallen 1 assist, 1 point, or 1 rebound shy of a triple-double.
So clearly he's terrible.
Yeah, it's putting it right there. It's the third time they've had this kind of winning streak. Or it matches our longest win streak in franchise history at 13. The current winning streak features the best scoring differential of any of their 3 13-game win streaks. They're on right now. They have one more road game at Indy. Then they have 4 home games, Philly, Atlanta, the Lakers, and Utah. So certainly a chance for them to keep rolling.
And it's been amazing. LeBron James' performance, career high from beyond the arc so far this season, shooting around 43%. It's how do you explain that? And it becomes... It's all of the benefits of being a veteran player in the league, and you know the benefits you have, the things that you learn along the way, but he's been able to stave off any sort of physical decline. So when you can couple those with already maybe the best physical skill set we've ever seen in the NBA, you're starting to see a guy that's somehow gotten better with age. Like usually time and physical deterioration prevents us from seeing what I think we're seeing right now with LeBron, which is the best of those worlds colliding.
Well, let's throw this out there on our Twitter feed at Golic and Wingo. LeBron 15 years in, Tom Brady MVP candidate at 40. What's more impressive? What do you have? What's more impressive to you in terms of the age, the position, and what you have to do in that sport? What Tom is doing at 40, or what LeBron is doing 15 years in, playing like he's 21 years old? I'd be curious to see what the results would be for that. So
the age will be LeBron will turn 33 later this month. Yeah. That's an interesting question. I got to think.
Well,
about that
you're
one.
welcome. Well, I try and stimulate all kinds of thought here in the morning.
Radio Trey.
Yes. Wow. Whoever thought that would be the case? We continue with
Off the Top.
College basketball. Number 2 Kansas, number 5 Florida, both upset on Wednesday. The 4th and 5th losses so far this season by top 5 teams against, wait for it, unranked opponents.
Yeah, Mark, just the third time since the start of the 82 season that multiple top 5 teams lost on the same day against unranked non-conference opponents. So some of the biggest upsets we've had this season so far, according to ESPN's Basketball Power Index, was Washington State beating Kansas. You had Milwaukee beating Iowa State in November. On Friday, Grambling beat Georgia Tech. And, of course, on Tuesday, Ball State might beat our Fighting Irish. So been some upsets, but so much different than college basketball, it doesn't matter right now.
Yeah, then college football,
college football, right.
Absolutely. And to this point, I mean, you mentioned we're talking about a lot of teams, including Notre Dame, that are probably Elite 8, Final 4 bound, and so they've got plenty of time to recover and play their best ball later in the season.
I like how you snuck that in there.
There you go.
Elite
We'll figure that
8,
out going forward.
Right.
Proof's in the pudding.
You mentioned college football, right?
Yes, I did.
Off the Top.
Continuing off the top, Rocky Top is alone no more, apparently. Tennessee finalizing a deal with Alabama defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt to become its next head coach. So after this long and, quite frankly, ugly search at times, it looks like Tennessee has finally found a man.
And you saw by the people that they were interviewing, they were going to go on from the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of defensive coordinators around the league, and Pruitt's a guy from 07 to 12 was with Alabama in some capacity that included a defensive back coach before he started his defensive coordinator run, which was a year at Florida State, a couple of years at Georgia, and then a couple of years here at Alabama. And by the way, how about the people that Nick Saban is putting out? Pruitt's going to be the 4th former Nick Saban assistant who is now an SEC head coach. Kirby Smart at Georgia, Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, Will Muschamp at South Carolina. So he's starting a nice little coaching tree himself there.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for the recent departures. I mean, you look even outside of that, you've got Lane Kiffin, who's done really well at FAU this year, and Steve Sarkisian, who we're getting ready to watch as the offensive coordinator for the Falcons on Thursday Night Football. So guys that have been part of sort of that Nick Saban halfway house of coaching, where he brings these guys in that may have a little bit of marks on their resume and helps get them back on their feet.
Gets them going. It's like the ESPN coaching incubator here, right? We get them back, get them all set, and then we send them off to their future glory, Herm Edwards and Aaron Boone.
Just the bigger scope of that. Just imagine that all the assistant coaches that were on the road recruiting all got the call, come back home. Yeah. We have a coach. So, I mean, that's the thing about it. Everybody just sees the head coach, but everybody else that's affected by this. These guys are now flying back, wondering if they're going to have a job, going to have to interview to try and stay there. New head coaches a lot of times want to bring their own guys in, so it's a heck of a domino effect.
It's one of those things, too, learning more about it after you leave, because when you're in college football, your view is pretty myopic and you're focused on your own world. But going back and talking to a lot of the coaches that were on the staff when I was at Notre Dame, you've got coaches paying off 2 and 3 houses whose kids and family might not even be in this particular location with them. I understand the paychecks are good and a lot of people won't lose sleep over it because of that. They can afford it, but it's a taxing lifestyle. We see it take its toll on people all the time, and this is one of those instances where I obviously look up and feel pretty strongly and pretty badly for these guys at certain times.
Oh, no question. And it's a life disruption that people don't understand. They see the glory on the Saturdays, and they don't see everything that goes on in the offseason trying to handle all that stuff, especially, as you said, Mike, when suddenly, hey, do I still have a job? Do I start looking for where I might find a job next season? And we finish up
off the top
with the NFL. The Saints visit the Falcons tonight, seeking to clinch their 6th 10-win season under head coach Sean Payton, which would be more than they had in franchise history prior to Payton's arrival.
It's amazing. And again, the biggest difference to me, well, 2, the defense is playing a lot better, and the running game they have with Ingram and Kamara haven't had a running game like this since they won the Super Bowl. Ingram needs one more touchdown to join Kamara as running back teammates with 1,000 scrimmage yards each and 10 touchdowns in the same season. I mean, they are just fantastic what they're doing out of the backfield. But as we said from Atlanta's side, Atlanta's kind of found themselves a little more of what we saw more last year, where there was a lot of early on this year, and they have their chances. We keep saying 2 of the next 3 weeks they take on New Orleans, or 2 games back of them, so they can control what they do right now.
Yeah, we're breaking up the logjam of the South Division there in the NFC that's had a stranglehold on the back end of the playoff picture. That's going to sort itself out. Be interested, Mark Ingram, I think he's questionable with a toe for tonight going into the game, so if Alvin Kamara is asked to carry the whole load as a rookie, could be an interesting viewpoint of this game. But this is a team that's been doing it all without, I'd say, the marquee production we're used to from Drew Brees.
Look, and the cephalopod has proven to be very helpful this year. Alvin Kamara is a cephalopod. He has no bones. He just slides away from people. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it.
It is pretty amazing.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
And by the way, Drew Brees and Matt Ryan, how about this? They're going to meet for the 18th time. It's going to tie for the most common starting quarterback head-to-head regular season matchup in the Super Bowl era. Brees holds the edge 10-7 on that one. I always love that one, though, with quarterback matching up. They don't play against one another.
Yeah. We're not in the three-point stance firing off on the line.
Exactly right, yeah.
That's why, the quarterback wins thing sometimes can be
debated
for that very reason.
Yeah, little 2 pitchers and batters on this one for lineups that change as often as these do.
Exactly. So that is indeed what was off the top, and now it's time for what everybody's talking about. Brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. And a lot of people in and around the NFL talking about Rodger Goodell getting paid. Despite the best efforts of Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, a new contract is in place for Rodger Goodell that could pay him upwards of $200 million over the next 5 years.
And he's already made $200 million so far. He's been the commissioner since 2006. And by the way, I did see him last night. I was my wife and I were in New York.
Oh, cool.
At a Mike was over at the house watching the dogs.
Yeah, I was over there cleaning up urine and dog feces while you guys were hobnobbing with the commissioner.
Yeah,
so congrats to you.
Good to know as you're eating your breakfast.
It was actually a great event. I do want to spend because this is good stuff. It's a Gen Youth. It's for America's youth, active, help them live healthy lives in schools and communities, and they bring in some of these students. I mean, it's a very cool thing that the NFL is a part of. There were people from the Players Association there. They have some fantastic, great sponsorships as well. A lot of money was raised for this, so Alexis Glick is the CEO of Genu. She does a fantastic job. So that first and foremost, there was a lot of great money raised for the youth, and I know I'm going to say this name, and everybody loses their mind on politics, but forget the politics of everything. It was a guy who was talking about the youth of America, and that's what we were there for. Bill Clinton was the keynote speaker, and he was fantastic talking about the youth and how we can help and all that. So it was a great event that raised a lot of money. But Rodger Goodell was there, so
What'd you guys talk about?
We chatted for a moment. Listen, it's a fundraising event. I know him anyway. It's not like I won't criticize at times when I feel it has to happen. But this was a fundraiser last night, so it's not like we're sitting around talking business at all. So
let's talk business now.
So now we talk
let's
business.
Talk business now.
And then one of the first tweets I saw was, how could this guy get paid this amount of money? This is a slap in the face to all the players and everybody and coaches in the league. This isn't right. And my thought was, what's the difference? Whether you're negotiating a $100 contract or a $200 million contract, you ask for what you want, both sides negotiate, and you come to an understanding. At any time, both sides could walk away in any negotiation, and the deal couldn't be done. We all have worked on contracts where we're here at ESPN, and we're sitting here because we worked something out. And I'm sure there would be many people that say, oh, my God, how could you pay him that? Or how do you only got that? That's negotiation. So when people lose their mind over this number, all I say is you negotiated it. It's both sides have the right to ask for what they want and negotiate what they want to do for, and they came to a conclusion here. So I don't know how are you going to say, oh, my God, what are they doing? Why are they paying that? They of free will all negotiated this. And my thought is, remember we were all ripping the NBA players of the names of the guys we didn't know that were making all this money. This
Good
guy.
for them.
That's exactly right.
Good for them, man.
Go get all the money you can. If you can get somebody to have you sign your name on a dotted line that's going to pay you incredible amount of money, good for you.
It's the subjective theory of value, right? You're worth what someone's willing to pay you in all of this. We say this time and time again with players. I think the sentiment here with Rodger Goodell is the dollar amount is going to, for a certain group of people, throw them off because it's the same crowd that says, well, why aren't teachers making that money, yada, yada, on down the list. So forgetting, that crowd of people for a second, they're going to look at this and say, what about Rodger Goodell's performance and what do his bosses see in him that merits signing him on for something like this? And I think that's what comes under fire.
Sure.
And that's for a lot of us not understanding the nature of who he answers to and what he's expected to do for them.
Well, that's the other thing. Let's be clear. People look at commissioners going back to Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was the first Major League Baseball commissioner, who was brought in after the Black Sox scandal of 1919 to clean up the sport. Okay, the role of commissioner has changed dramatically since then. Let's just be honest about it. It's not a caretaker of the game. It's not someone who is supposed to look at everything. The commissioner works for the owners.
Right.
The commissioner in every sport works for the owners. That's who employ him. That's who he answers
That's
to.
who they agree to hire him.
That's exactly right. The NFLPA is not signing off on this.
No.
It's the NFL owners deciding who they want their commissioner to be. And the NFL owners, 31 of them plus the group that owns the Green Bay Packers, have deemed that Rodger has done a decent job since 2006, and they want him to do a good job going forward for the next 5 years. And I always love it when people say, but look at the declining ratings. Okay, that's fine. Let's look at the declining television ratings and tell me what other sport that wouldn't kill to have those declining ratings next to their sport. I mean, hey, only 18 million people watched this game on Sunday. Hey, did you see that NBA game where 2 million people watched it? So I understand what you're saying. It was maybe up here and it's here, but it's still far and away bigger than any other sport on television.
I agree, but it doesn't mean they don't feel they have to fix some things as well.
Without question.
No doubt. But to your point, it's a ton they make, or a ton that people watch, and then it's a little less than a ton. So, yes, ratings are down, blink, 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 but still a lot of people are watching. But there are issues that they have been dealing with and are continuing to deal with that they're going to need to remedy to try if they want to get those people back. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
And to your point, Mike, you're right. When people see this number, because what's going to be out there everywhere is since 2006 when Rodger Goodell took over, he's made $200 million so far before this new extension. Remember, this extension, he still had another year and a half, I think, on his deal, and then it's 5 years past that, so it will include, obviously, the new CBA when he gets bargained. But he earned $200 million already, and what we do is we compare that again since 2006 when Rodger Goodell took over. The players that have made the most money Drew Brees, $183 million, Eli, $175, Phillip, $165, and Matthew Stafford, $161. So people are going to say, oh, he's making more than all the players are making. But as Trey said, that's not the perspective to look at this in.
It's not. And people will always bring up work structures and the money and the luxury afforded to the people at the head of certain organizations as opposed to people doing the groundwork. But for this, too, I mean, we can already look at the structure of this contract and wonder if some of the owners' issues with the way things have been handled and the way things have trended are reflected somewhat. I mean, we know the top end of the dollar amount. We don't know exactly what the escalators are, but we know somewhere around 85% of this deal is built in off escalators and things that kick in only with approval once the standards are met by the owners in the league.
Look, and there's a lot of issues still to be worked out, not only between the owners and Rodger Goodell, but one owner specifically. Jerry Jones, of course, tried very hard to fight this. It didn't work out. However, according to our Adam Schefter, Jerry has not given up the fight yet on that.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS-ConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Rolling through a Thursday morning on Golic and Wingo. Glad you're here with us. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. We are presented by Progressive Insurance, and all phone guests will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So Rodger Goodell, as we were talking about, gets this extension, 5 years, that could be worth up to $212 million, I think, with the numbers. It's somewhat incentive-laden, which is interesting, as opposed to what it's been over the last time around. But obviously, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones was trying to slow this train down. And there were some understandable reasons, I think, why Jerry was looking at this, besides maybe a little personal vendetta because of the suspension to Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, Rodger did have 18 months left on his contract.
He did.
There were some issues that seemed to have affected the league negatively this year. Declining viewership, the anthem protests, all that seemed sticky, for lack of a better term. And it looks like that has sort of moved on, and Rodger is going to get that extension and is locked in with this new contract. However, according to our Adam Schefter, who will join us in a couple of hours from now, he says that despite Goodell's deal done, Cowboys owner Jerry Jones is still out there fighting.
The compensation committee sent out to the other owners today. It said it's great to have near unanimous approval. And usually when the league pushes something very significant and important, they always have unanimous approval. In this particular case, it was duly noted that they said that they had near unanimous approval. I don't think Jerry Jones was probably in favor of this. I think he was on the lookout to try to modify this deal, keep it in check, reduce some of the money in the package, see if he could perhaps change the structure of the league office, maybe reduce some of the employees there. I don't think Jerry Jones is done quite yet.
I'm not really sure where to go with that.
That's what I'm concerned about.
The deal is done, and it wasn't unanimous, but I'm not really sure where this goes, because I think a lot of this, and a lot of sometimes what's happened, and we've seen this, happens not because of the situation at hand. So you have this compensation committee that's tasked to get a deal done. And now all of a sudden you have on the outside of that, Jerry Jones, who's not part of this committee, start to ruffle some feathers. So while you can make the point like you did, Trey, okay, listen, there are some things going on. There's 18 months left on the contract. Maybe we can hold off on this, is understandable. But that would be the competition or the compensation committee's thought to do. All of a sudden, they have a committee. One of the other owners comes in and starts bigfooting and loudmouthing about it. Now what do you get into? Egos. Oh, wait a minute. You want to do this? You're not part of this committee. We'll bring you onto this committee. Wait, you want to service papers? Step back. Now we're getting this deal done. So it almost becomes like this ego fight of billionaires to say, you're not coming in and stopping what we do, even though maybe it's something that should be done. But now, no. Now we're going through with it because of what you're doing.
Well, yeah, we know these guys are all prideful enough in their own right because they've come to this money. They all believe that their way is the best way. The difference is we've seen Jerry Jones as a guy who's able to wield in the past a pretty solid amount of influence over these groups. And so now knowing that 85% of Rodger Goodell's contract hangs in the balance, is incentive-based, and has to be agreed upon and approved by the league and the owners before those incentives are doled out, maybe Jerry Jones looks to use some of his influence there. Maybe the fact that that's the way this is structured is already a hint that some of what he was aiming for got home.
Look, and this is something I'm curious to ask Adam when he comes in and joins us. What exactly would be Jerry Jones be fighting for here? What's the battle he can win now that he's lost this big one?
I think that's a great point because any incentives would be something good happening for the league, wouldn't it?
Right.
I mean, you're incentivizing him doing well for the people who are hiring him.
Correct.
So that's what I'd like to hear from Adam as well. What is Jerry Jones going to do? Have him not get his incentives, which would mean something is not happening well for the league? I don't really understand that one. And
Adam,
again, I'm not a billionaire.
Right. That makes three of us.
Yeah.
So we'll ask Adam when he joins us a little later on Golic and Wingo this morning. But let's move from the compensation committee to the competition committee. And we talked about this a little at the top of the show. The NFL is discussing the possibility of adding a targeting rule that you have in college football that will require a mandatory ejection for players who hit defenseless opponents above the shoulder. Now, the framework of the rule, in place since 2013 in college football, is on the 2018 agenda on the NFL's powerful competition committee. But they're also, guys, talking about doing something, for lack of a better term now, that they're referring to as the Gronkowski rule, which is looking at hits like Rob Gronkowski put on Tre'Davious White, or, quite frankly, like the hit that Mike Evans put on Marshawn Lattimore in Week 9 when he hit him in the back, as separate instances. And when we saw all these one-game suspensions this past week, that was, I think, the thing that got a lot of people confused.
Right.
How could a block by Juju Smith-Schuster or a hit by George Iloka on a play while a play was happening, which, by the way, was eventually reduced to a fine, be a one-game suspension, much in the same way the Mike Evans hit on Marshawn Lattimore or the hit that Rob Gronkowski put on Tre'Davious White get a one-game suspension. Those things are not apples to apples. They're apples to oranges. And the idea that there'll be some rule, Junior, that says, hey, if there's an intent to injure away from the play of the play on the field, that would be held to a higher standard. I think that's brilliant.
It is, and that's one thing that Mike Mitchell, in amidst the litany of things that he pointed out, sort of echoed the point we made the other day, which is that players really want definition and structure when it comes to rules like this, and especially rules that are either going to take them off the field or lighten their wallet. And so when you know the framework you have to operate in, I think it makes it a little easier for some guys to stick by those and at the very least feel like they understand what's going on rather than being left in the dark by some subjective arbiter of what's right and wrong.
I completely agree. They want to know what the standards are, but then you get to the point of, okay, now who deems it that? If this is 3 to 5 games, then how now does that fit in the box? You know what I mean? So you said now what is what if it's less than what Evans did or Gronk did? I guess that's the next thing that players will want to know.
Where's the line?
Where is the line? We saw what Gronk did. What if Gronk didn't hit him that hard? What if Tre'Davious White was just getting up and Gronk shoved him back down? Still after the play, would still get you a flag, but where's that line then, of demarcation of, okay, this is one where you get tossed, this is where you don't, this is where you get 1 game, this is where you get 3 games. While I completely agree with you that players want to know the number, then there's still going to be some gray area of when you hit that magic number.
There's always going to be discretion.
Yeah.
I think to that point there should be a range for these kind of things. They tried to do a range with the domestic violence penalty, but they didn't present it as such, and so you run into an issue. I think if you're clear and decisive in saying it can land you between this and this many games or this fine and this many games, then you've got the understanding that the rest of that at some point is always going to be up to someone's discretion.
Well, and then it becomes, okay, what can you appeal it down to? Because, for example, we saw both Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree clearly outside of the play,
right,
going nuts, squaring off in 2 Chainz the sequel in Oakland a few weeks ago. So then the question becomes, okay, if you're going to have that new category of suspension or penalty, which I think we're all in favor of having that as a separate entity away from something that happens on the field. What can it be reduced to? What would be palatable if it's a 3-game suspension and you get it reduced to 1? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
I agree with that. So you'd want to make the penalty probably harsher than what you know you're probably going to end up with appeals. But I'm with you. I wouldn't have no problem looking more at that. You start getting to that targeting rule and start tossing guys out of the game, I'm going to be really, really, not that they care, but I'm going to be really aggravated about that.
I'm sort of interested.
I care.
Yeah.
I'm sort of interested in that because I don't see these things as all that apart other than because I think your real discomfort in this is that it's referees making the decision, right? Because if referees are asked to make this decision on the fly, there's very little difference between a suspension that takes you off the field or an ejection that takes you off the field. Right. It's just who you have making the decision. And a lot of guys aren't really in favor of Rodger Goodell making that decision about who gets to be on and off the field to begin with.
Though.
When it comes to that, well, it doesn't matter.
That ship sailed a long time ago.
You could say that ship will sail when the referee thing come up then if they tried to go forward with these ejections, but it seems to be a problem with who is giving them the power. I think that's why they appoint so many former players to review these sort of things. So you look at that and say, listen, that's one of your own. That's a guy that lived it like you did. And so you can't argue his point. Like, that seems to be the big hang-up on this is there are certain people we don't trust with these kind of decisions, and players specifically don't trust.
It is true. They do hire, I remember when former players used to walk around and be the basically the uniform police, where your socks right, was your jersey right. They'd walk around at pregame and tell you about it. If you didn't fix it, you'd get fined. And we're bringing up the names in case people don't know them. John Runyon, who keeps putting out these sternly worded,
strongly advised emails.
He was a former old lineman in the league. You're talking about James Thrash, who hears these appeals. He was a former wide receiver. Derek Brooks, the former linebacker. So to your point, you're right. To then the bigger issues, it goes to Rodger Goodell on appeal coming back, or somebody like a Harold Henderson, like who he will appoint for that. To your point, though, I get it. Now it's referees. See, that's what, and we'll get more into this. That's what is going to get me is how are you going to define it? No matter what, you get hit in the head, you're going to get tossed out of the game. Is there going to be some area of, do you want to start looking at intent? Did the receiver change his levels? That's where it gets gray to me, and that's where it gets bad to me.
Right, and the other issue, which we can get into later, is the fact that in college you have, 80 guys on a roster that are eligible to play every game? 75, something like that?
Oh, at least 85. There's 85 scholarships, usually more on the sideline.
So you got 46 in the NFL. You start tossing people, you're going to run out. You may be running out of people to play. I mean, there's a bigger injury with injuries that go along as well.
And a closer margin between good and bad. Yes. In college, you'll play maybe 2 or 3 teams as good as you if you're a top-end team. In the NFL, it's every week.
That's exactly right. Okay, Junior, you alluded to it. Steelers safety Mike Mitchell sounded off yesterday in one of the most awesome rants you will ever hear, and we will get to that. We roll on Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Lots of talk about what happened this week with the suspensions and now a fine for George Iloka and the hits in the Monday night game and what Rob Gronkowski did. And some players, like many former players, are very confused as to what they can and can't do. Mm-hmm. And this led to an unbelievable rant by Steelers safety Mike Mitchell, who I should point out we've had on NFL Live a bunch of times. I don't think he's a dirty player at all. I think he's a great player. And I think he plays the game the way you should play it, hard and through the whistle. But after what happened Monday night with the Juju Smith suspension and the George Iloka suspension and what happened with Gronk over the weekend, let's just say Mike was confused and a little passionate about his confusion, and he wanted everybody to know.
This is not damn football. When I was 6 years old, watching Charles Woodson, Rob Woodson, Sean Taylor, the hitters, Jack Tatum, that's football. This ain't football. You got to know what the risk is when you sign up. No one wants to be paralyzed. No one wants to have head injuries. These are all things that are negative. But let's not try to turn football into a dangerous, barbaric game. This is how I've changed my family legacy. Before I got drafted, I had $368 to my bank account. That is far from the case today. I've changed my family legacy by this beautiful game of football for forever. So let's not try to turn it into some evil, dirty game. It's football. It's no different than UFC fighting. This is a combat, contact sport. There's going to be injuries. That's just what it is. But if you don't want to get injured, then don't come out here. This is for real men. This is a man's game. Ray Lewis said that a couple years ago. I stand by that. It's a man's game. If you want to be a little kid, you don't want to get your hit, then don't come out here because this is for grown men.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's just part of what he had to say, by the way. We'll get into some other parts of it later. But I think what he's speaking to, really, there's two folds there. I think people want to know what exactly they can and can't do. Mm-hmm. But I think he also needs to understand that all what he's saying may be true, but I think the NFL, whether he likes it or not, is trying to adjust that to a new reality.
Listen, that's the biggest thing. And it's the way I was raised. I mean, when my dad, who coached myself and my brother Greg and my brother Bob, my dad played football in the Marines. He played football in the Canadian Football League. He was as tough as they come and told us before we played all the things that are going to happen. You're going to break bones. You're going to get stitches. You're going to get cut. You're going to get hurt. You're going to tear things. You're going to break things. It's going to happen. It happens. It's a tough sport, and he taught us to play as a tough sport. I tried to teach that to Mike and Jake when they were coming up and playing football, to play it as a tough sport, to hit somebody as hard as you can. You're going to get hit, all the things that can happen to you, and I get it. And I understand what he's saying about the sport. That's the thing. That's how I was raised. I tried to raise Mike and Jake. It's how Mike Mitchell was raised, and a lot of these guys are raised. And then, Trey, to your point, it's shifting now because what happens is you find out. I keep bringing this up, but when I was a kid, we never wore seatbelts. You learned it was a lot better and smarter to wear a seatbelt. You learned it was smarter to wear a helmet when you were riding a bike, which is something we never did when I was a kid. You learned these things over time that were better. We're finding out more and more about the game and the ramifications of it. So the league is taking a look, again, a league that got sued and basically has given up about $1 billion off that lawsuit, but also we're finding out more information. So there are things you need to adjust. Some players don't like the adjustment and don't want to adjust. But I will say, to his defense, the hardest position to play in football now, Mike, is defensive backfield, because it is kind of ambiguous. Where do I hit a guy? I'm trying to hit a guy here, and then all of a sudden his level changes, and now I hit him here, and now I'm $40,000 lighter in my pocket. I understand that side of it, but Mike has to understand the game has changed some. Some people don't like it, but it is changed some, and it's not going back to what it was because of some of the things we're learning.
I think it's easier for former players and people on the outside to reconcile with that, too. Like, OCU Manura tweeted yesterday, "Are players really this dumb? Hate to say it, but come on. Former players have died and are dying horrible deaths because of head trauma. You're complaining because the league is trying to take steps to at least reduce it. Quote, make it flag football is ridiculous." So you have these guys, but to your point with Mike Mitchell, this is self-preservation. You have to have this mentality to survive playing a game as physical as this one is. And without it, I think you become less of the player that a lot of these guys pride themselves on being. So it's a difficult to adjustment. We say all the time, the adjustment you have to make in the strike zone, on the fly with the target, the adjustment you have to make mentally with how you treat the thought process behind some of those hits, with how you treat the thought process of potentially holding yourself out if you believe you've got a concussion and doing right by your body physically in a way that wasn't necessarily apropos before. It's all something that's going to come slower than maybe everything else about these changes.
Hey, look, eventually these changes have to not come at the NFL level. They have to come at youth football level.
That's exactly right. So you want the next generation.
Yes.
So these players are used to doing it away, and for a couple of years now, they've been told to change. We always talk about players being able to adjust. They're trying. I think they're adjusting some, but it's coming at a slower rate, and they don't like the kind of the attitude adjustment out there. I think it is going to take the next kind of generation through that are learning the game maybe a different way to see how it ends up when those young kids are in the NFL.
Yeah, trickle down's not going to work. It's got to trickle up in this situation. And I think we can safely say, having listened to that was Straight Talk.
Yes.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks.
Bet he has more.
Oh, he does, Junior. You mentioned flag football. We got more from Mike Mitchell, and it continues to be an epic rant.